So welcome everybody. My name is Lori Dunagan. I'm one of the coaches with the Productivity Coaching Program, if we have not met before. And usually every first Monday of the month, I take over and do the workshop instead of Brittany, and it's typically contract related. And so it is contract related today as well, but instead of going over how to fill out a contract, what we're going to be looking at is when you get offers, like in a multiple offer scenario, how do you determine, and it's always the seller that determines it, not us as agents, but how do we determine which is the best offer to go through, and how do we present multiple offers to our sellers? And so I've got a spreadsheet that I'm going to share with you, and I've actually got 3 different scenarios, so we'll see how the time works out, if we're able to go through all 3 of them or not. But I would like today's workshop to be very interactive, because this is something where we're going to look at the spreadsheet and I'm going to ask you guys questions, and I want feedback on, why something is one way or why we want it to be a different way, or what you guys would do or suggest. So if you can, turn on your cameras, and definitely don't be afraid to unmute yourself. If you've got noise in the background, just unmute while you speak and then remute yourself. But let me ask before I get started. Have any of you guys been in that situation yet where you've had to present an offer, or I shouldn't say had to, where you've gotten to present an offer to a seller or multiple offers to a seller? Okay, great. So this will all be kind of new for you guys, which is great. This is going to kind of give you some insight, or at least I'm hoping it's going to give you some insight as to what we look at in an offer and what we share with our sellers. There are no right or wrong answers, so don't be afraid to participate because your answer might be wrong, because we're just going to explore, the different things. So let me go ahead and share my screen. The other thing is, when I'm sharing my screen, I can't always see you guys. And so don't be afraid to interrupt me. If you raise your hand, I might not see that till the very end. And if you put something in the chat, I also might not see that until the very end. So here we go. Now, the price point on some of these are a little bit lower. These were done like a couple years ago, and so that would explain like the price point. Plus, I'm in a low cost area compared to where some of you are, and so that would also explain some of the lower price points. So in this particular scenario, we had a house that was listed. It was listed at $260,000. And we ended up getting 5 offers on this house. Now, the thing that's kind of funny about this particular one, is we actually had it on the market. And while I had told the sellers that 260 was where we needed to be, they wanted to list it up closer to 3. And so we did that. I went ahead and did that. And of course, we had very little showings, no offers. And as soon as we reduced it down to the price where I had originally recommended, we ended up with 5 different offers. And so sometimes we just have to prove that point to our sellers with real life scenarios. So anyways, we ended up getting 5 offers on this property. And this is a spreadsheet that I have. If you're part of the PC program, we have something similar to this in the toolkit, although it's laid out more horizontally than vertically, but it shows the same information. So what I like to do is I like to throw the offers into a spreadsheet, and when I present them, I will send the offers to the sellers. And the way I send offers to the sellers actually is I send them the entire offer, all 20-something pages of it. But then I also take those 3 main pages that have the terms of the offer. So I call that the meat and the potatoes of the offer. And I'll create a PDF where it's just those 3 pages, and I'll send that along with that. And then I'll usually summarize them. Although if it's multiple offers, I summarize it with a spreadsheet. And so what I also do is I highlight the things on the spreadsheet that I want to call the seller's attention to, or that I want to remember to talk about when I'm talking to the seller. And so I'll send this to the seller, I'll let them review it, and then we'll meet, and then we'll discuss, the different offers. Sometimes there's a clear-cut winner, and sometimes there's not. And so what I want to do today is just kind of go over what I'm looking at, why I'm looking at that, and then I want to get your guys' opinion. And there is no right or wrong answer here, but I want to get your guys' opinion on which offer you would accept out of the 5 offers. So in this particular case, we got 5 offers. So one was 263, 260, 265, 270, and 260. So right off the bat, again, I think we had it on the market for 260. So right off the bat, the 270 stands out, right? It's highest price. But it's not always about the highest price. It's also about terms. And so close of escrow, we had, well, let me show you something else. So I got the purchase price and then I got purchase price net. Now, this does not mean what the seller's going to net because I'm not taking into account escrow fees or obviously repairs or anything like that. What I'm taking into account here is, are they asking for a seller credit? Or is there anything in particular that they're asking them to pay for that is going to reduce what their price is? So for example, this guy offered 263. He's netting 260, and that's because down here, they're asking for a seller credit of 3,000. And so when the seller's looking at this, we're not really looking at a $263,000 offer, right? We're looking at a 260. So we end up with 2 at 260, 1 at 265, 1 at 270, and 1 at 261.5. Close of escrow. Anywhere, so we've got a 30-day, 45, but they will do 30. We had a specific date that somebody wanted to close. Somebody left it blank, and then we had someone else asking for 35 days. Now, let me just, not knowing any other information, let me ask you guys, which would be the strongest offer based off of the close of escrow?
I think it depends on the date. When I see 7/27, what's the date that you're writing the offer? And
Okay.
then when I see blank, does that mean they're open to anything that works for the seller?
What it probably means is they're not part of the PC program and they didn't have coaches review the offer before they submitted it. That's what I'm guessing that means. And that's the thing. That's where, as an agent, I would need to reach out to the buyer's agent and get clarification on that, right? And so forget about the date, forget about the 7/27 and the blanks blank, but let's look at the 30 or 45 or 35 days. Out of those 3, which do you guys think would be the strongest offer?
30-day.
I would say 30 today too.
Okay. Any other guesses? So this is kind of a trick question because the strongest offer is going to depend on what the seller's goals are. Do they need a longer escrow? Because if they do, then 45 days would probably be more beneficial. But if they're ready to move now, then the 30 days would be more beneficial. So it would just depend. So that's something when we're submitting offers for our clients, we always want to reach out to the seller's agent and find out what works best for them. Of course, we still have to go within the parameters of what our lender and the appraiser can do, but it's good to ask. Now, in this case, something that was really interesting on this is that 2 of the offers, offer number 1 and offer number 4, were VA. And when I say that they'll need clearance, what that means is that if a buyer is using a VA loan, the VA is going to require that the house have termite clearance. And that means if they do the pest report and there's any items that come up as Section 1, those have to be taken care of in order for the loan to go through. 2 of the buyers here, so this is conventional with clearance, and you normally don't see that, but in this particular case, they were ITIN buyers, and so they were getting a special loan, and the lender on that also required clearance. So normally that's not a requirement. And then we had a traditional conventional.
Lori, is the clearance on the conventional, is that a termite clearance also?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so 4 of them required termite clearance, 1 did not require termite clearance. And the reason that like, for example, that they put 45 days on this one is because of the loan program that they were using. It's just kind of a longer loan program, although it was exactly the same as this one that put the date here. So it's good to know what type of loan they're getting and what the requirements are when we're evaluating offers. So based off of the loan type only, well, no, I'm not even going to ask that question. And then we got various EMDs, right? And so in my area, it is very common for an EMD to be 1%, which in this case would be right around 2,600, 2,700. So 2 of them are low compared to that, and then the other 3 are a little bit higher. Okay, And then here we have, I usually put the lender, the lender's company. Why do I care what the lender company is? Anyone know?
I would think mainly for contact that someone you can get a hold of.
Yeah, I mean, definitely we want to make sure that we can get a hold of the lender. A lot of times, the lender matters. So is it a lender that I've worked with before that I know that that lender can close the loan? Is it a local lender? Is it a lender from another state that I'm going to have to, call them during, different working hours? I hope I can get a hold of them. So there's different things. And so a lot of times, like in the MLS, at least in my area, you'll see that they prefer the client to be qualified with a local lender versus a non-local one. And so I usually put that in there. Sometimes it comes into play, sometimes it doesn't. Okay, down payment. So 2 of them have 0 for down payment. Is that a red flag?
Not with VA, because VA doesn't require a down payment.
Correct. Exactly. So VA doesn't require a down payment, so that's perfect. And then the other ones, so these 2 that are the self-help, they require 20% down payment. So that's why we're seeing a high down payment here. And then this one, just conventional, has a higher down payment. Other loan terms. So this guy's asking for a seller credit of 3,000. And so that's why I've got that up on the top. Are they pre-qualified or pre-approved? Which one is better, to be pre-qualified or pre-approved?
Option 5 for pre-approved.
Yes, pre-approved is stronger. They've done a little bit more. It doesn't mean that they're fully underwritten, that the loan's 100% going to go through, but the lender has looked at their stuff in a little more detail if they're pre-approved versus pre-qualified. And then I always put the pre-approval amount just to make sure that it matches whatever they're offering. And if it doesn't, then I'm going to, reach out to the lender and make sure that they are indeed qualified for the amount that they're writing the offer for. Okay. On the finance terms, one of them said that they're willing to take the house as is besides lender required repairs. So they are telling us up front, and this is not guaranteed, but they're telling us up front that they're not going to ask for any repairs unless the lender requires it. This guy's telling us pretty much the same thing, that the buyer will pay for all necessary repairs. So this means that even if it's a lender required repair, the buyer is willing to pay for it. So right up front on these 2, we pretty much know, or we can assume based off what they're telling us, that we're not going to have a big request for repairs because of what they've written here. These 3, who knows? They haven't addressed that. Okay, appraisal contingency. So 17 days is the standard appraisal contingency in the contract. This person has shortened it to 10 days. And that's why I have it yellow, just because it's different than the other ones. So it's just calling to my attention, okay, shorter appraisal contingency, shorter loan contingency, shorter days on inspections. As a buyer, as a seller, why do we care that those appraisal dates are 10 days instead of 17 days? As a seller.
My first guess is that you're not tying up the property as long. You're moving things forward.
Yes. So if something comes up and the home doesn't appraise, or there's a big issue with the inspections, that means that they're going to back out in 10 days versus 17 days. And if that's the case, then we can put it back on the market sooner. So that's why shorter contingency periods are better. But if you're going to do like a 10-day contingency on the loan or the appraisal, you have to talk to the lender first and make sure that the lender can accommodate that timeline, because we can't promise things that the lender's not able to accommodate. Okay. And so like right here where it says as is besides lender required repairs or buyer to pay for all necessary repairs. Well, if they come in, they still have their inspection contingency, right? So if something comes up and they don't want to pay for it, that's where they still have the option to ask us ask the seller if they'll pay for it, or they can back out. So it doesn't mean that they've given up their right to have repairs done, because they still have their inspection contingency. Okay, then I have what are they requesting? So this is just a summary here, like this guy hasn't asked for anything. Mirrors is automatically marked on the RPA, and then the other ones have checked a couple of boxes. It's very normal for the stove to be a requested item. And so they hadn't asked for anything to be excluded. The NHD report, that runs anywhere from like $70 to $100. Environmental is about $20 more. So this one is asking for the report to be about $20 more. This one's saying the buyer will do that cost. So then this is where I'm really looking at. I'm always looking at pest, okay? Pest clearance, or anytime you see the word pest report on a contract, that's getting my attention. And so we automatically know VA, whether it's written on there or not, is going to require pest clearance. They left blank, but I know that they need clearance because of who the lender is. Yes, because of who the lender is. And then buyer's going to pay this one. This one they're asking the seller to pay for. These ones, I don't think they asked the seller to pay for the reports, but we just know that they're going to need clearance. So does anybody know, and I'm not expecting you guys to know this, but does anybody know why agreeing to clearance on the RPA from the seller standpoint is risky?
Because you don't know how much damage is going to be there on the report.
Exactly. So when a buyer and seller go into contract, they agree to specific things, right? And a buyer has a lot of ways to get out. So if the buyer does their inspections, they don't like it, they can get out of the contract. But once a seller goes under contract, they have very little ways to get out. Like once they sign, they're pretty much gonna sell that house, right? And so we want to know, when we're representing the seller, what are they hopefully going to net from this house, right? What are they going to walk away with? Well, when we agree to clearance, we're agreeing to clearance no matter what that costs. So basically what we're doing is we're signing our seller up to write a blank check. Because if the pest company comes out and says, you know what, there's a lot of termites here and it's going to cost $12,000 to fix all the things that need to be fixed and to tent the house and to get rid of the termites and all of that. At that point, the seller might say, whoa, $12,000. Nope, I'm not doing it. That's too much. I'm going to do something different, right? But if they've agreed to clearance up front, they don't have a choice. They have to pay that, whatever those repairs cost. And so pest clearance is a little bit risky. In fact, anytime you see, like, even if the buyer's only asking for the seller to pay for the pest report, so the pest report, somewhere around $125, right? Not a big deal for the seller to pay for it. But if it's written on the contract, the lender's going to ask for clearance. So even if the buyer isn't asking for clearance, the lender's going to ask it if the word pest is on the report, is on the contract. So if you have a buyer, even if they're going to ask for a pest repairs, it's better to not ask for the pest report on the contract. Of course, if it's VA, they don't have a choice. It's going to have to be there. Okay, so then this is just some notes I've got, who's paying for what. And then we come down here, home warranty. Okay, home warranty, $500 to $700, maybe a little bit more, depending if it has a pool or whatever the case might be. So that affects the seller's bottom line. So this one, all four of these, they're asking the seller to pay for it. This one, the buyer's willing to pay for it. So out of this, the buyer would be a stronger term. I mean, offer number 5 would be stronger because they're not asking for that additional money to come out of the seller's pocket. None of these are contingent on the sale of the buyer's property. And they all agreed to mediation and arbitration. This one is asking, this one is offering. Now, the seller may not need this, but this one is offering to give the seller 3 days to remain in possession after the close of escrow. So that might be something that the seller appreciates, or in this case, the house, they had the house vacant before, so it didn't even really matter. They didn't need it, but it was offered. This is just if it's an FHA or a VA, did they fill out the additional form? Okay, so I know that was a lot, and I know it's hard to look at it in this format because it's not all on the screens, and so I'm happy to show you guys anything else if you want to see it. But go ahead and put in the chat like what offer you would choose if you were the seller, or which offer you would recommend if you were the agent. So number 4 is offering the highest price, but they're going to need clearance. Number 5 is 10,000 lower than the highest one, but they don't need clearance.
Lori, we go back up just a little bit. I was going to ask you on the, oh, it won't matter. Okay, never mind. Go ahead, go down. Sorry. You're good.
Number 4 and 5 have some language about the repairs. Number 4 has shortened inspection and contingency dates. I see Adina's question. Can I attach this to the chat? Yes, I can. Yeah, I'll do that in just a second. Okay, so Adina says cash offer, which would be nice, but we didn't end up getting a cash offer in this scenario. We've got a vote for 5. We've got another vote for 5, 30-day with conventional loan. So that would be, which one is that, Adina? Okay. Okay. So why would you guys choose the ones that you chose?
I chose mine because it's like so much less hassle to like deal with conventional loan than VA loan. And also 30-day escrow is like about standard, and also it's enough time to like, do all the inspections and everything else.
Okay. Okay, very good. And it is really sad. So I am my son's a veteran, so I'm a big supporter of our veterans and our military, and I really feel like the VA should be like the chosen loan, but that whole thing with the clearance really just throws a big wrench in it. So okay, so good. So any questions on this? If not, we'll go ahead and review the next
I
one.
have a quick question. When you say the thing with the clearance throws the little niche into the offer, if the lender already has their VA clearance, it shouldn't be a big deal, right?
Okay, so when I'm talking about the clearance, I'm not talking about the VA clearance. I'm talking about the pest clearance on the house.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
something completely
But then you're
different.
looking at conventional loans that need it too.
Yes, and so in this particular case, number 1, 2, 3, and 4 are all essentially equal because they all need that clearance. And so number 5, they're getting 10,000 less, but they're not taking that risk of what that is. Now, something else that you could do is you could kind of put these offers on hold for a minute, and of course you'd have to communicate, but go get a pest report. So from a seller's perspective, you're talking about $125, and then is clearance going to be an issue or not? Because if clearance is not going to be an issue, then maybe we want to take that loan that's 10,000 higher. I mean, take the offer that's 10,000 higher versus 10,000 lower, right? Because maybe it doesn't have termites at all, or maybe it's a $500 fix. So those are, some things to consider. Of course, this one, buyer to pay for all necessary repairs, means there weren't going to, ideally you wouldn't have to pay for any repairs. Okay. Okay, so this is a second price. Now this one, there's a very obvious answer to this one. Actually, I might have changed it so it's not. So, okay, so here we have 3 offers at $390, 1 at $365, and 1 at $395. And this is something to think about, like when you're submitting an offer on behalf of your clients, like it's being compared to other offers. And so sometimes the little things matter, sometimes they don't. So this one was a couple years ago. So this was right in the middle of, when we were waiving appraisals and all of that at a really high level. And so on this one, I'm going to ask you guys which one is you think would be the best, and then I might ask you between a couple of others. So this one, they're all asking $390. Now, the thing that was interesting on this one is that I was pre-negotiating with the agents. And so when I get an offer in and then I got higher offer, and especially the ones that would call me and ask me, hey, how's my client's offer? You know, are we still competitive, whatever. And so I was able to bring the offers up before we even got into the stage where we may have done counter offers. So for example, if I come down here on this offer number 2, the original offer was $385 with a $35,000 appraisal gap, and we got them up $5,000 on both. So now we've got 3 offers that are $390 and $195. Now you see I didn't highlight this number E because it's, in fact, let me see. I didn't highlight offer number 4 just because it was so much less, it really wasn't in competition. So they all had either an appraisal gap or they waived the appraisal. So here we got our net purchase price. So you can see number 2, while it started out at $390, well, $389 is only a little bit less, so not too much of a difference, but there we go. So close of escrow, one's offering a shortened close of escrow, but they're the ones that are also offering the really low offer price. EMD looks good on all of them. It's at least the minimum. 2 are conventional, one's FHA, another conventional, and cash. Okay, so right off the bat, we can see we've got a $395 appraisal waived cash offer, right? So that at first glance appears to beat out all of the other ones, because if we've got cash, we're not dealing with a lender, we're not dealing with an appraisal, and it could be, you know, sweet there. But if we come down here, so no appraisal, no loan contingency, 17 days on their inspections, seller to do the normal things, home warranty they waived, and they have proof of funds. Okay, so on this one, we've got an obvious winner, right? But let's say we don't have that offer. Let's just look at these 3. Now, out of these 3, which one would we choose? So now we've got one has waived the appraisal, which is perfect. Like we want a waived appraisal, right? But this one's got a $40,000 appraisal gap, and this one's got a $36,000 appraisal gap. And if you don't know, an appraisal gap, what that means is that in this example, if this house only appraised at $350, then the lender's only going to write the loan for $350. But this buyer is saying, if it appraises at $350, I've got $40,000 in cash that I'm willing to bring to the table so that you, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, still get your $390. So that's what the appraisal gap is. So all of these are both of these are pretty high, at least for, what our area is. And then one is completely waived. This one dropped down a little bit, so $389, $420. So we're talking about, $500-$600. It's probably the home warranty, not a huge difference here. They're all 3 are asking for 30-day escrow. They've got comparable EMDs. 2 are conventional, one's an FHA loan. They've all 3 got pretty decent down payments. Obviously the FHA one is quite a bit higher than the other 2. And, loan amounts aren't too much of a concern. These 2 are pre-qualified. This one is pre-approved, so a little bit stronger on the approval. This one waived the appraisal, and then these ones are asking for 17 days on the appraisal, which is standard. 17 and 21 days on the loan. Inspections, this one's offering a shorter inspection period. So we've got the waived appraisal and we've got a shorter inspection period. These are all comparable on what they're asking the seller to pay for. This is why the one went down a little bit, because they're asking the seller to pay for the home warranty, and the other 2 offers are not. This is something to be concerned with, though. So contingent on sale of buyer's property. So yes, but it's already in contract. So what that means is that while this guy's offering $390, they're waiving the appraisal, and they're doing shortened inspection periods, it is contingent upon somebody else buying their house in order for them to have the funds to buy this house. And that has some risks with it. And the other two, while they're not quite as strong, don't have that to contend with. And then everything else is pretty much equal. So what type of conversation would you have with your buyer, I mean with your seller, if you got these three offers?
Well, I would definitely explain to my seller is the first offer is contingent, which is what does it mean? Because it might not sell, the buyer's house might not sell when he or she wants to sell it. So it's very risky actually. And I would choose the number 2 because that gives you the best option. And I
Okay.
would explain it why.
Okay. And so one of the ways that we can kind of attempt to mitigate some of the risk of the home being contingent is to talk to the other agent and just see like where are they at in that. So has your buyer's buyer, so the sale of their home, has that buyer already removed the contingencies, or where are they in that? Because that can affect, because if that buyer decides, you know, does an inspection and decides, nope, I don't want to buy it because of this, that means your buyer falls out of escrow, which means your buyer is going to fall out of escrow with you as well. So that's the risk with that. So
exactly. And also to add to that is the other risk is I feel like I don't know why they put only 10 days for the inspection, or what was that? One of the contingencies.
yeah.
Yeah, because like I would even put more because of the contingency offer. Like it should be like at least 17 days, I believe.
Well, keep in mind, they know that their offer is less competitive because of that contingency. So they're trying to strengthen their offer in other areas, which is probably why they completely waived the appraisal and why they shortened those contingency periods. But the other thing is, because they're already in escrow on the other house, their like timeline may have already started in the sale of their house. And so now they're trying to catch up with the purchase of this one, although they did still ask for a 30-day escrow. So my guess is that they're just trying to make the offer stronger in other ways. Okay, so Adina would do number 2. Go ahead and put in the chat what, besides number 5, what offer you think that the buyer should accept. And again, we're at pretty much 390 at all of them. The first one waived the appraisal, but has that contingency for the sale of their home. First one has the shortened inspections. The other two have standard inspections. The second one's asking the seller to pay for the home warranty. The first and third are not.
Lori, I'm having some technical difficulties.
Are you as a not going in the chat?
I can't even find the chat right now, and I was switching over to the other screen to see the form, and it's like super tiny. So I'm just having a tough time seeing to even give you an answer. My answer would have been 1, but finding out where they were at in escrow initially. And between 2 and 3, I can't see everything on that list to make a wise decision. So,
Okay, cool.
yeah.
And I think the big thing between 2 and 3 is 4,000 on the appraisal gap, and then they're asking for the number 2. Number 2 has a higher appraisal gap, but they're asking for the seller to pay for the home warranty, which is about $500 to $600. Okay, and so I didn't see anybody put in the chat. So do you guys I don't know if you guys are all having kind of technical difficulty with that. But who else has an idea of which one they would recommend?
I was thinking 3 only because they're pre-approved and not pre-qualified. So that's
Okay.
something that I like to, that they're actually approved and not for that amount.
Yeah, they also have a higher down payment.
Yeah.
Okay, good perspective there. And it's always a good idea, or if it makes sense, to reach out to their lenders too and have a conversation with the lender. Now, the lender is representing them as the client, so the lender's not going to tell you everything, but you can still sometimes get like extra reassurance or get a feel for it. You know, if a client is just barely qualified by just like barely qualified and right on that edge of not being qualified, like the lender's probably not going to tell you that, but you can still have a conversation and get some information. Okay, anyone else want to share what they would offer? So it looks like so far we've got one of you guys would accept offer one would accept offer two, and the other one would accept offer three. So that's very interesting and goes to show that depending on, you know, who the agent is and who the seller is, not all offers are created equal, right?
Lori, isn't it true, right? The whole FHA qualifying process takes longer time usually than conventional.
Not necessarily. I think it's going to depend on the circumstances. Conventional loans have a lot more flexibility than FHA ones do, though.
Yeah, that's why I also chose two instead of three.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go on to the last offer, offer number 3. So on this one, I had made a note up here about the highest and best because again, we were working to bring the offers up, and I was from what their original offers were before we even went under contract. So not even as like a counter offer, I reached out and asked, you know, is this the best that your clients can do? And so in this case, we ended up with 4 offers. So offer 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, something that I did not do on this one is I didn't highlight any of this. So as we go through it, I want you guys to kind of tell me what you would highlight here. So let's just look at lines 3 through 10. What would you guys highlight? There's one thing in particular I'm looking for.
For sure, the purchase price, no?
Yeah, I mean, we want to bring that to our sellers. And because remember, the sellers aren't used to looking at all this, and so they don't even necessarily know what to look at, right?
Yeah, and the
The
EMD.
appraisal guy?
The appraisal gap. So that's the big one I'm going to highlight. $20,000 appraisal gap, and the other ones don't have any appraisal gap, right? And so yes, the EMD. So you know, from a seller's perspective, I would probably just highlight all of this just to kind of, you know, show them the different things that I'm going to talk to them about. Like on this one, so again, typical EMD is 1%. That'd be 5,200, and they're offering 1,000. And that makes me wonder, okay, do they not have cash available, or what's going on? Why is that so low? So that is something that I would probably question the agent about. So again, we got 1 FHA, 3 conventional, so no cash offers in this scenario. Down payment. So we've got, you know, pretty good down payments. Even the one that's only got 1,000 on the EMD is offering 70,000 on the down payment. So other loan terms. So on the RPA, there's when you're filling out the loan information, there is a place to put, you know, the interest rates not to exceed a certain amount. And this is kind of funny. So this is, you know, this was obviously a couple years ago old, but the interest rate was not to exceed 3%. Like, doesn't that just seem crazy?
The good old days, damn it.
The good old days, right? I'm like, oh my gosh. And 3% is so low even for that. And then here we go. This one is contingent on the sale of the buyer's home. The first 2 are pre-approved. The last 2 are pre-qualified. So I'm going to highlight that to show my clients. And then what are they approved for? So like this one's only approved for 400, but they're bringing 134 in down payment. So that takes them to 534, but they're offering 540 with a $20,000 appraisal gap. So then I'm kind of wondering a little bit about those numbers. Not, excuse me, Not that they can't do it, but the math just isn't adding up. But it's contingent on the sale of the buyer's home, so that might be where they're getting additional funds. So that could explain that. Under finance terms, let's see, buyer's going to do any lender required repairs if necessary. And then this one is actually, okay, so assuming I didn't type this wrong, $1,000 credit to the seller. So they're actually offering $1,000 credit to the seller. I don't know why they would do that instead of just paying $541. Maybe I wrote that wrong and I meant $1,000 credit to the buyer. As far as these, and it's funny, so you see these 21 days in here. So it used to be that the loan and appraisal automatically defaulted to 21 days in the agreement, in the contract, and then they changed that to 17 days. So that's why you see these 21 days. But this would be something that I might point out to my clients, just the different days on what they're asking. None of them really shortened them very much though. Excluded items. And so in the MLS, so this seller has a C train in the backyard, and in the MLS, it says that is excluded from the sale. But what's in the MLS doesn't matter unless it's in the contract, right? And so a C train might be considered personal property, but just to be safe, when I'm representing the seller, I want to make sure that in the contract, it specifically says that the C train is excluded, because even though it's in the MLS, that doesn't matter. So what this person did by putting it as an excluded item is saved me from having to do a counteroffer. They've kind of like taken care of that for me. So that's appreciated. So if you ever see something in the MLS that's marked as being excluded in the contract as well. NHD, buyer to pay, seller to pay. Normally or typically the seller pays for this. So the fact that the buyer is offering to pay it is, to save the seller a little bit of money. And then let me see. Here we go. Okay. So none of them are asking for roof certification. Pest. I don't have clearance here, so all they're asking for is the pest report, which is about, $125. So they're asking for a pest report for the buyer. What do I not like about that? It's $125.
The seller should pay for it. No?
So the pest report is it's negotiable. It's usually paid for by the buyer. And so they're saying that the buyer is going to pay for it. So in all four of these, assuming that there's going to, we can assume that there's going to be a pest inspection because there usually is. All four of these, the buyer is going to pay for it. One of them wrote in the contract that the buyer is going to pay for it.
Yeah, we are talking about $125. It should not be an issue. It should not be, ask for the buyer to pay for it.
Well, the buyer is going to pay for it.
They want to pay for it. Okay.
Yeah, in all of these, because this one they wrote buyer's going to pay for it. These ones they just left it blank. So when I say no, it just means blank. They didn't write pest in there.
So the FHA one is going to need clearance, and you don't know how much damage is there.
Yeah. So even if it's a conventional one, it doesn't matter the loan type. If pest is mentioned on the contract, the lender's going to require clearance. And so the fact that they wrote it on the contract now triggers clearance, whereas these three don't trigger that. So the outcome's the same. The buyer's going to pay for it in all four cases. The other thing is, so it's not always, but if a buyer does a pest report and there's termites, like they're probably going to ask for that in the request for repairs. So it's not even that the buyers, and they're not even asking for clearance here. They're just asking for that $125 report, right? It's just that having it on the contract now involves the lender and involves clearance. So don't put it on the contract if you can avoid it. Then let's see, this is all And just for my information, home warranty, so buyer's gonna pay for it, buyer's gonna pay for it. I think they left that blank, buyer's agent, so none of that affects the seller. Is it contingent on the sale of buyer's property? So we have a yes. So we're definitely gonna highlight that, right? Backup offers accepted after 17 days. That just has to do with the contingency. Like this one on the mediation and arbitration, this one was left blank. So this is a scenario where I would send that RPA back and well, assuming that my seller wanted the arbitration and mediation, like that's those two places that it gets initialed on the one page on the RPA. I would send this back or at least question the other agent and see, did the buyer purposefully not initial those or was it an accident? Most likely it was an accident and I'd send it back for them to sign it. It's not always. So that's what I put in my notes. The RPA was not fully executed. They were missing information on their RPA, which then gives me, and maybe this isn't fair, but kind of gives me a little bit insight on that agent. That agent isn't very detail oriented because they didn't even fill out the RPA completely, right? This is just a note, buyer's licensed real estate in state of California, lender lives across the street, and that lender specifically called. I will tell you, this number D right here, number 3, this person fought for this house. This agent, this client very much wanted this house. That's why the lender called and talked to me to fight for, that. Okay, so now let's go back up. Which offer are we accepting? This one's $540 with a $20,000 appraisal gap, but it's contingent on the sale of the buyer's home. This one is also offering $540. There is no appraisal gap. They're asking for a longer close of escrow, but it's not contingent on anything. And then this one's $520, $528. So I'm assuming that we would go with the higher offers. So for my client, it really came down between these two, number 3 and number 4. And so again, number 3 has a $20,000 appraisal gap. It's contingent upon them selling their home. They already lived in the neighborhood and they desperately wanted this house, so much so that their lender called to fight for it. This one's $540, 60-day escrow, no appraisal gap, not contingent on a home being sold. And this one right here, contingent on the sale of the buyer's home. In this particular case, it was not listed yet. They were going to list it like within a couple of days, but it was not listed yet. So which one would we go for, 3 or 4? Well, 1, 2, 3, or 4.
I would go 3 now, but I still like 2.
You like number 2?
Yeah, let's say like 2, but I would go 3 now. And I feel like 3 even would offer more money because they are so desperate. So the purchase price can be even more.
Okay. What do you like about number 2? This one's number 2. What do you like about number 2? Because it's 12,000 less.
If you scroll down, I think I like something. First of all, yeah, the EMD, it's like they're willing to pay so much more, like 8,000. That's higher than the number 3. Also because they are pre-approved. Yes, I'm sticking with 2.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, because it's, as I said, it's such a stronger statement. If something is already pre-approved, then pre-qualified,
Okay.
Definitely.
And the buyer's going to do all lender required repairs if there are any. Now, this was a really nice house, so we didn't expect too many lender required repairs. But that's again $12,000 less. So you're going to give up $12,000 because they're pre-approved versus
no, there is
pre-qualified.
something else at the bottom. Let me see if we can scroll down the bottom. What else I liked here? I'm just worried about, because as I said, like, contingency offers can be a little bit risky. So that's why I'm just like, this can take more time, even though they want it desperately, but I just always go with something what is like they already sold their house or they already, they don't have to do contingency. So that's why it would worth it for me, because I feel like it will be a faster escrow. And
Yeah, well, it would have been a 30-day escrow. The other ones were longer, 45 and 60.
exactly.
Right. Any other opinions? What offers would you guys take?
I liked 3.
Uh-huh.
And one of the things I'm looking at is the appraisal gap.
Yes.
So that could cause a problem for the 4th offer,
Mhm.
and everything could fall apart on that end. And then also the person being an agent, they know the process, even though they're not qualified, they know what they need to do. They're familiar with it,
Mhm.
hopefully. So just
Uh-huh.
a little thought there. It could be, I mean, some questions to follow up. And then just seeing their, I'm looking at the numbers, the loan ratios at 74%. Am I reading that right?
Uh-huh.
So that they're more invested financially.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, so those are kind of, I'm literally taking pictures of the screen and going over it on my phone because I can't see it on the screen. I don't know what's going on. So I'm trying to answer the questions looking at my phone.
Okay.
Yeah, I think
All
that
right.
was really the main points on that one that caught my attention.
Okay, so we've got a vote for number 2 and a vote for number 3. Any other votes?
And they're not requesting anything also, number 3.
Yeah.
That's
So the thing,
number 4.
so the
I have
thing
a
that,
question on, so I'm
yes.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
For 3, because they're offering 540, but they're only approved for like 400, and then it doesn't math like their down payment.
Yeah.
That's my only concern with option 3.
Okay, and that is something that we would definitely call and get more information on. And I think in this case, it's because in this particular case, this buyer wasn't looking to buy a house, but this house came up in their neighborhood and it was like right across the street and right like they knew people in the neighborhood. So it was like, we want this house. So I think they scrambled to get pre-approved and then they were going to put their house on the market and then they were going to probably have more, but that's definitely something that like great eye. The other thing on this one though that would be a concern on number 3 is because they don't have their house on the market yet. So we don't know what they're going to ask for it. So they could be reasonable and put it for a price that's going to get offers, or they might price it too high to get offers, but now we're locked up in contract with somebody who's got their house priced too high to sell. And so at least if it's already on the market, we can look at it and say, okay, yes, I think that they'll get offers on this, but not being on the market. So that would be another follow-up question with the agent. Well, what are you guys going to list it at? And, do I think it's going to sell at that? Because that factors in too.
Oh, forget it. I thought that it was already on the market.
No, number 3 is not on the market yet.
Forget 3.
Yeah. Well, and here's where it's really harder. I'm empathetic, and so when I've got this agent calling me like every day asking for an update and really expressing how bad they want it, and I can relate to wanting a specific house. Like this wasn't just a random house, it was a specific house. Like it's really hard to not get invested in voting for certain clients under certain situations. I will tell you, my client felt for number 3 and wanted to go with number 3, but the fact that it wasn't on the market yet, they went with number 4. So so number 4 got accepted and went through with no problem, no issues on the appraisal. But so it's not, when you get multiple offers, it's not always, black and white on like who's offering the highest amount, because there's other things that go into play. Okay, so we're at 12:30. So that is it for our workshop. But before we go, are there any questions that anyone wants to ask that I can, it's 12:30, so you're welcome to go, but I'm also good for questions if you have any.
I have a question, Lori. I just wrote an offer on Friday for buyers, and they are VA. And they definitely need the clearance on the termite. And so the way it was written was, I just wrote termite in the contract because we definitely need that, but I didn't write anything about the clearance. So what's your thoughts on that?
So on the VA, it doesn't really matter a whole lot because clearance is going to be needed whether it's in the contract or not in the contract. The only difference there is that the seller has not agreed up front to provide clearance. If they accept your offer, what they're agreeing up front to provide is the report, because you didn't write clearance in there.
Okay, yeah.
And so that's where, when I'm in a scenario like that, whether I'm representing buyer or seller, what we'll usually do is we'll just try to get that pest report done immediately so we can see, okay, are there any major issues? Is this going to be, like, if I'm let's say I'm representing a VA buyer. Day one, we're going to go in, we're going to try to get that clearance, the pest report, the pest inspection, and then see, is there something that's going to be a big issue? If not, then we'll move forward with our other inspections. But if I do that and figure out, it's a $12,000 repair and that's an extreme number, but then I'm going to have a conversation with the agent before we see where we're going moving forward.
Okay, so we did offer to pay for the report initially. And what I hear you saying is the buyers, they're willing to put their money towards this house for that report. And what I hear you saying also is that if there are, like, don't do any of the other inspections until the termite report comes back.
Not necessarily, but at the same time, the seller hasn't yet. It's one of those situations where it could go either way. And it's just different agents will do it different ways. You want to proceed with the inspections, quickly. So I'm not suggesting that you hold off on inspections, but if you think that there's going to be issue with the pest report, then I would, because if you can get them in right away, they can usually get that report back to you within, 24 hours, or at least the companies I used it within 24 hours. So you can get that information right away. You know what I mean? So I might do that if I was concerned about it.
Okay. Yeah, just on the ideas of trying to save them money, doing a home inspection on top of the termite inspection to find out there's a bunch of problems there. That's all I was thinking.
And an agent representing a seller, when they accept a VA loan, like, they should know that clearance is part of that. But if it's a newer agent that doesn't know that, then they might not know that. So that's something, and like I said, because you just put the pest report, which, if your buyer's doing that, you don't even need to put that in the contract. It's just if they're asking for pest clearance that you would put it in the contract. And with a VA buyer, they have to have it whether it's in the contract or not. And then the other thing is the VA buyer can pay for if there's issues, the VA buyer can pay for it, but you just don't want your buyer going in and doing repairs on a house that they don't own, because if it falls out of escrow, now they've repaired someone else's house. So it can get tricky when you're trying to write an offer or negotiate an offer when clearance is required. I don't put clearance on the report. I don't put pest clearance, even if I'm representing a VA buyer. Of course, it depends on what my buyer wants to do, but I don't put pest clearance on the contract, because if I'm representing a seller, I'm not going to, quote unquote, I'm not going to advise them to accept an offer that requires clearance where I'm committing to it on the contract until I know what that dollar amount is going to be. Because I'm not going to let my sellers write a blank check.
Correct. Yeah, I just wrote termite on the offer from the buyer to the seller, and didn't put anything else on there.
Yeah, so that just means report. It doesn't mean clearance.
Correct. And that we were willing to pay for the report.
Yeah.
Okay.
And even if you didn't put it on the contract, that's the assumption, or that would still be your buyer paying for it. So you don't have, the fact that your buyer was going to pay for it, it didn't have to go on the contract.
Okay.
Because by default, if it's not on there, your buyer's paying for it.
Okay.
Lori, I just want to thank you. This was fun.
Good.
Thanks for
Good. I'm glad
breaking
you.
it down for us. I loved it. So yeah, we can do more of this. I love doing math, and you broke it down very clearly. So thank you.
Yeah, it's a different side. It's one thing to learn how to write an offer, but it's a different thing to see what those offers look like from the seller's perspective. So I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Thank you. Have a great day. Okay.
You too. Bye,
And then
everyone.
real
Oh.
quick on the, if you want to add the home warranty and the buyers are willing to pay for it, I left it blank on the offer. Can I go back later and add that?
So if the buyer, so no, once the offer is already submitted, like you can't go back and add any of that stuff. But the buyer, if the buyer's willing to pay for the home warranty, they can buy that outside of escrow.
Okay, doesn't
So-
need to be part of the contract.
No,
Okay.
it doesn't. The main thing on that home warranty on the contract is that's your one chance to ask the seller to pay for it.
Okay, okay, good. Yeah, and we already know that they don't have the funds too, so perfect. All right.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
You're welcome. All right, guys. I'll see you later.